massive AI computing capacity.
And it's the whole ecosystem, right? Not just the processors.
Definitely. They highlighted speeding up enterprise AI adoption with things like RTX PRO servers.
Yeah.
And new networking tech is critical too. Spectrum-X, Quantum-X. You need super fast connections between all those GPUs.
You mentioned Blackwell Ultra. They also talked about performance benchmarks.
Yeah, MLPerf.
Yeah.
It's a standard way to measure AI inference speed, how fast models make predictions.
And Blackwell did well.
Extremely well. Up to 30 times higher throughput according to their results. It's a massive leap for actually using these AI models efficiently.
Okay, what about outside the data center? Gaming seems strong too.
Record quarter for gaming. $3.8 billion in revenue. That's up 48% just from Q4 and 42% year over year. Really impressive.
New graphics cards announced.
Yeah, the GeForce RTX 5070 and 5060 for PCs, and they noted DLSS 4, their AI performance boosting tech, is now in over 125 games. They listed some big ones like Black Myth Wukong, Indiana Jones, Star Wars Outlaws.
And there was that interesting bit about Nintendo.
Oh yeah. Tucked away in there was the news that the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2, it's going to be powered by an NVIDIA processor.
And using DLSS.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Using AI-powered DLSS, potentially enabling up to 4K gaming on that handheld. That's pretty cool.
Definitely. Okay, moving on. Professional visualization.
Troviz, that's for things like design, simulation, animation. Revenue there was $509 million, pretty much flat compared to Q4, but still up 19% from last year.
New products there too.
Yeah, new RPX PRO, Blackwell series cards, and even things they call personal AI supercomputers, like the DGX Sparkin station for individual researchers or creators.
And they're pushing that Omniverse platform, right? For simulation.
Right, integrating it with major industrial software from companies like Siemens, SAP, Ansys. The idea is to use it for developing physical AI, things like robots interacting with the real world, simulated first.
Which brings us to automotive and robotics.
Right. Revenue there was $567 million, down just slightly, 1% from Q4, but up a very healthy 72% year over year.
Collaborating with GM, I saw?
Yeah, on future vehicles and manufacturing tech. They also launched a safety system called Halos, but a big focus, you can tell, is on humanoid robots.
What Isaac GR0T model.
Exactly. That's their foundation AI model, sort of the brain for these robots. And they're providing the tools and the Blackwell hardware needed to develop and train them. It seems like a major strategic bet for them.
Let's bring in the CEO's perspective. Jensen Huang's comments were quoted in the sources, giving a kind of broader view.
Yeah, he painted a picture of just immense global demand, called the demand for NVIDIA's AI infrastructure incredibly strong.
And he mentioned AI inference specifically.
He did. Said token generation for inference surged tenfold in the past year. And he expects AI agents, AI that can perform tasks to accelerate demand even further.
He had that quote about AI being essential infrastructure.
Right, saying countries now see AI as an essential infrastructure, just like electricity and the internet. And naturally, he sees NVIDIA at the center of this profound transformation.
Now, he also addressed the China export situation directly, didn't he?
He did. One source mentioned he estimated the tariffs could cost NVIDIA around $10 billion in lost earnings overall. He was quite critical of the policy itself.
How so?
He basically argued that the assumption behind the controls that China couldn't make its own advanced AI chips was questionable to begin with and is now clearly wrong.
Okay.
And he suggested that export controls should really focus on strengthening U.S. tech platforms rather than, as he put it, drive half of the world's AI talent to rivals.
But the source also included another angle to his comments about U.S. manufacturing.
Yes, it's important context. The source also quoted him acknowledging President Trump's push, saying Trump had outlined a bold vision to reshore advanced manufacturing, create jobs, and strengthen national security within the U.S.
So presenting both those facets of his commentary, it highlights the complex balancing act he's performing, right? Navigating global markets and domestic policy pressures.
It's a very tricky landscape.
Okay, so looking forward then. What did NVIDIA guide for the current quarter, Q2 of fiscal 26?
They're forecasting revenue of $45.0 billion, give or take 2%.
So roughly flat to slightly up from Q1.
Right, but, and this is crucial, they explicitly stated that this number already reflects an expected loss of about $8.0 billion in H20 revenue because of those export controls.
$8 billion, wow. So without that continued impact, the underlying growth trend would still be pointing strongly upwards.
Exactly. It really quantifies the ongoing hit from that specific policy on that specific product line.
And gross margins, are they expecting those to recover?
Yes. The non-GAAP outlook for Q2 is 72.0%, plus or minus 0.5%. So a nice rebound from the Q1 reported number.
And they mentioned longer-term goals for margin.
Yeah, working towards getting back into the mid-70% range later this year.
Okay, and operating expenses.
Expected around $4.0 billion non-GAAP for Q2, with full-year growth projected in the mid-30s% range. Standard operational growth stuff.
So how did the market react to all this? The news articles covered that pretty extensively.
Oh, the reaction was immediate. Very positive. NVIDIA's stock was set to open much higher. Pre-market futures were pointing to like a 4.9% gain.
Which translates to?
One source calculated that as about a $160 billion increase in market value overnight.
Just incredible. And that put them right in the mix for the top spot globally, right? Market cap-wise?
Exactly. That surge was pushing their market capitalization towards maybe $3.45 trillion.
Which would put them potentially ahead of Microsoft?
Potentially, yeah. Microsoft closed the day before around $3.4 trillion, though they were also seeing gains. And Apple's right there, too, of course.
So it depends on how the actual trading day plays out, but they were definitely vying for that #1 position.
No doubt. And it's been quite a ride for the stock price, as one article pointed out.
How so?
Well, it hit maybe $150 late last year, then dropped under $95 back in April after those Liberation Day tariffs were announced.
Ah, linking it back to the export controls again.
Right. And after these results, the expectation was it would jump back over $140 at the open. So still up nicely over the past year, but actually kind of flat for 2025 itself until this big boost.
Okay, so pulling it all together, the sources, the press release, the news commentary, anything else we should mention? Dividends, accounting details.
Well, the press release mentioned the standard stuff, like an upcoming cash dividend, small, 0.11 cents per share after the split. And importantly, they provide all the reconciliation tables between GAAP and non-GAAP.
Which helps you see that underlying performance without the H20 charge that we discussed.
Exactly. It allows investors to kind of parse out that specific impact.
So what's the final takeaway here? What's the core story these sources tell us?
I think it's a story of just phenomenal growth, first and foremost, driven by this almost unbelievable demand for AI infrastructure, where NVIDIA is clearly the leader.
But also a story of real-world impact from geopolitics.
Absolutely. A very clear example of how trade policy and export controls can directly hit a company's bottom line, even when riding such a huge wave of demand. It impacted specific products, specific markets, and resulted in that big charge.
Yet underneath that specific issue, the core business seems incredibly healthy.
Definitely. The underlying profitability looks strong when you adjust for the charge. And the pace of innovation across all their segments, data center, gaming, ProVs, automotive, robotics, it just keeps accelerating. New products, new partnerships, constantly pushing forward.
And all this puts them right at the heart of the AI boom, contending for that title of world's most valuable company.
It really does. The demand is there, the technology is leading edge, and the market is clearly rewarding them for it, despite the headwinds.
So these results really show NVIDIA firing on almost all cylinders, fueled by this massive AI wave, even while navigating some pretty serious geopolitical crosscurrents that are directly impacting their business.
Yeah, it's a fascinating picture. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
About what?
Well, as AI becomes increasingly recognized around the world as truly essential infrastructure, like electricity or the internet, as Hong put it, and you have companies like NVIDIA that are so central to building it. What does that mean for the bigger picture, for global trade, for national tech strategies? How does the world balance that drive for innovation and global access against national security concerns and the push for regulation? It's a huge question going forward.